I do like
Let her
because
finish.
I feel like with men, it's like growing up, because I have a lot of brothers. So growing up with men, they were never given that opportunity to have that emotional boundary. They were never allowed to break down and cry. They were never allowed to have that thing. But that was instilled from my dad. That was never instilled from my mom. That was, well, it was a bit, but it was more of like a culturally, men aren't allowed that option. And I feel like that's what breeds these men into thinking that they can't be emotional because it's interjected into them from such a young age. They're like conditioned to be that you have to be the strong man. And it's like, you not only do you do that to yourself, you now produce it onto other men. So if another man comes up to you, starts crying, you'll be like, don't be a bitch, man. Like, stand up. Do you know what I mean? So then me as a woman, I'm looking for like an emotional partner. I'm trying to be like your emotional support. But when you've been conditioned to not be emotional, like how much can I give in order for you to actually like...
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
If you had your boyfriend, your man or whatever, and then let's say a guy come to rob you, he had a knife, he come to rob you and he was threatening your lives, and then your guy, what would you expect your guy to do?
I mean, again, like I said, I've grown up in a very cultural...
What would you expect your guy to do?
Honest to God, I would expect my guy to protect me. Okay. But if he doesn't protect me, do you know what I mean? Like, I can't blame him because that's a shock situation for everyone.
But you would expect him to protect
you. Of course.
Okay, so what would you do in that scenario if you burst out crying?
I'll burst out crying too. We're crying together, baby.
Okay, cool. So what would your opinion be of that situation, since you already said that you'd expect him to defend you? What would be your opinion of that guy after that?
It doesn't lower my opinion of him as a man. It does lower my expectation as him being like my protector. So it's like if a situation similar was to occur, I would never look at him and be like, you're supposed to look out for me. Like, it would give me that sort of like masculine energy within myself to be like, I have to look after myself.
So then you would lack respect for him because you would I guarantee once you're in your masculine energy, you as a woman would then control the relationship, without a shadow of a doubt.
100%. When women do have that masculine energy within that relationship, they do have more control. But in terms of respect, there's so many different ways to gain respect and like lose respect. I will lose a bit of respect. I'm not going to say, yeah, my respect for him is the same level. No, there will be a little bit of respect gone because, like I said, an expectation that I had for him has been disproved. Do you know what I mean?
Let me say this. Like, you're saying all this stuff, but now my masculine energy is going to be up, increase and all this. At the end of the day, don't you think that protection and provision is just like the natural elements that women usually want from a man that they couple up with?
100%.
Don't you think that's probably been from the beginning of time? And don't you agree that will probably always be the same forever? Like in interpersonal relationships and dating dynamics, relationships between men and women, because biologically men are stronger than women. Don't you think it's pretty much biologically the role of the man to protect his woman, especially if that's a woman you have children for?
Yeah,
100%.
So if
that's why you want him to be taller than you.
If you are with a man that in the first sign of trouble he breaks down and starts crying, you start crying together, that you are like instinctually you're gonna be like, this guy cannot perform the job. This guy is not the guy. This is not the guy I should be having babies with because he's weak and he's gonna breed weak offspring. This is an intrinsic thing. Because you just said you lose respect for him.
I wouldn't say it would go to an extent where I'm thinking now, I don't know if he would be a good father.
I said intrinsically.
So unconsciously, you wouldn't consciously be thinking it. But also, I want to just step back one step, if you don't mind. Just to the point where she said that it's the men's fault. The women are the ones, when you have a son, it's your mother's fault that it's mother's fault. Mothers give birth, and up until a certain age, boys are raised by their mothers. So if a boy is unable to communicate effectively as a mother of a son, my son's dad isn't there to teach my son how to communicate effectively with his emotions because that's not his role as a man. He's there to teach him how to be a man. So as a woman, my role is to teach him how to communicate effectively. A lot of young men don't know how to communicate because their mothers don't force that element. They don't teach their children full stop to communicate.
I feel like, but that takes a lot of like responsibility away from the role as a father. Like, I feel like...
No, I've just said men are there to teach their sons how to be men.
No, but...
We have different roles.
But even men teaching men how to be men, why can't that be an additional factor? Why can't men teach men how to be emotional?
But because men are not born emotional. Men are not born that, but because we are... But
that's what you conditioned to believe.
No, it's like me saying to you, be a man. Be a man. Be logical. Be logical in what you're saying right now. It's not your natural order. It's not natural. So it has to be taught. Your father would have taught you elements of how to be logical. That's why girls without fathers in the house are emotionally erratic, because they don't have that. Yes.
I didn't have my father in the house for a certain amount of time, and I'm not emotionally
erratic. Yeah, but a certain amount of time. You've just said it, and you said you grew up with all boys. Yeah. So you have that instilled in you and around you.
But we were all raised by like my mother, and we still, like, even still, I still think that men should be able to teach other men how to be emotionally available.
Only if they're taught that from their mothers.
But even if you're not taught that from your mother, it's still like you have a responsibility as a person to have that emotional barrier. You have that like responsibility to know.
How do you think they're meant to find that? How would you go about? If you said that you, like, as a man, how would you tell your son? I haven't taught you this, but go and find it.
I'm not saying I haven't taught you and go and find it, but it's a thing where it's like, you should be able to, like, if your son comes to you as a father and he's like feeling like angry and all these other things, or he's feeling a certain emotion, you as a father should be able to be like, okay, I'm receiving this emotion. Let's talk about it. Let's discuss it. Let's actually communicate on it. Do you know what I mean? Because I found it like, with my brothers, they were more to turn to their dad, like our dad, when it came to like situations where they were angry or emotional. They would never really turn to my mom. Mm-hmm. So for me, it's like, when they're turning to my dad, he's giving this advice where it's like, just man up. That's where the barrier is breaking.
Your dad can't do it because he wasn't taught by his mother.
I was going to say that, yeah.
I don't know.
Every child in this world has come from a woman.
Of course.
Every element of the early years is, unless obviously we're talking about the average and the general, it comes from a woman. So nurturing, communication especially comes from a woman. Okay, so if a man doesn't know how to do it, it's the mother's fault.
It's true.
But what if you're like raised with like a single parent, and the single parent ends up being a father? Isn't that still his responsibility?
Yeah, it is. But if he hasn't been taught it, I can guarantee, unless he actively goes out of his way to learn how to be that way. Yeah, but that's not we're not talking about like the anomaly here. We're talking about
of course. But I'm saying, like, even if you are not taught about it, like now, doesn't stop you from the opportunity from learning about it later. Like, you should be able to learn about it.
100%. And that's why I think all young women should learn how to communicate effectively, so 100%. They can teach their sons, so that we can change this narrative of men can't communicate effectively with their partners. And then hopefully, eventually, we'll have men that are not sad.
Okay. It's a little agree to disagree, but I do agree with some, but yeah.
Somewhat. Okay, cool. So who else is... So yeah, we come back to you. What do you offer a guy that he can't pay for? What do you offer